humans are now hackable animals. Today, we have the technology to hack human beings on a massive scale. This story about Jesus rising from the dead and being the Son of God, this is fake news.
This is their plan, that people don't have freedom of will anymore.
That's not conspiracy. That's on your phone when you downloaded that app.
This is going down the realm of the Matrix. That's really like everybody plugged in, no more free will. You're just computing power. You're just part of the system.
Guys like Yuval, they come and they go.
That is insane that people actually have that thought.
We are one shred away from a full-on Chinese-style dictatorship.
It's coming to a country near you. This is their plan. Welcome everybody to another Truth Matters podcast. Today, it's a little bit of a different episode. We're going to be taking a look at Yuval Noah Harari. And as always, I have Matt here. And this guy is really interesting.
Seems like it. I mean, we're going to take a look at a number of clips today, and we just kind of want to look inside of the thought process, because we've connected the World Economic Forum and Klausa Švaba and the UN. These are all, harken back to the papacy, the Jesuit order. And so when we see these guys talking, it's supposed to help us get insights into how they think about us individually as humans, because we've talked about it a lot, the elites versus the goyim, right?
Yeah.
The low-level people, that would be us in this scenario. So we're going to take a look and hopefully share with the audience a little bit what these people think about us and what might be in store for our future if things are to go the way they plan.
So Yuval is quite the individual. I'm just going to read here. This is actually from the World Economic Forum website. So he's a member there. He spoke there at Davos, and he has quite the list of accomplishments here. So he has a PhD from the University of Oxford, which has Jesuit connections. Mm-hmm. And he has sold more than 20 million copies of his books worldwide. So this isn't like some nobody. This is a big guy, big mover. He's on TED Talks. He's with Russell Brand. He's talking to a lot of these very big guys. And his view really on the world is quite dark, especially on humanity. Let's actually specify. On humans, it's very dark, mm-hmm. because basically there's no purpose for humans on the world. And if there is humans, then we have to do some modifications.
Yeah, and what does that do to God, the designer, and Jesus Christ, who literally came from heaven to earth to save us puny little non-properly functioning entities?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it really does a number on the God of the Bible. Jesus Christ is our personal Lord and Savior, and is this thought process where I think you and I hold the belief that we've been devolving, so to speak, ever since the Garden of Eden. Lifespans of getting shorter, memories are worse, food is less healthy, and yet this viewpoint is kind of like where we need to evolve through technology into this perfect humanoid. Like, we think we're going like this, and the World Economic Forum and Yuval specifically thinks that through technology and transhumanism, we're going to achieve some sort of perfection in humanity.
So let's take a look at some clips we're going to show, and we're just going to go through some of the thinking that these guys have.
Little reaction videos today.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are humans for? As far as we know, for nothing. I mean, there is no great cosmic drama, some great cosmic plan that we have a role to play in it. And we just need to discover what our role is and then play it to the best of our ability. This has been the story of all religions and ideologies and so forth, but as a scientist, the best I can say, this is not true. There is no universal drama with a role in it for Homo sapiens. If you repeat a lie...
So let's pause it for a second. So right there, basically what he's saying is there's no great controversy.
Yeah, and the fact that he says we have no role in anything, that we're almost like this cosmic accident.
Yeah,
it's
unfortunately happened.
Yeah, I feel bad for guys like this because it's clear that God has blessed them with intelligence, but it shows how much intelligence can distort your view of reality. And he almost infers here that because he's a scientist, that means that he has the intellect to see that we are just basically this cosmic accident that doesn't have any role. Now, for people out there looking for something to have hope in, what does that do to their hope?
There's no hope.
Yeah.
There's no purpose really in life.
Yeah.
And that's why people then end it.
Yeah.
Because there's no God who cares about me. There's no bigger purpose. There's no plan. There's no, like he said, basically, there's no use for us.
Which is a sad, sad perspective. And I feel bad that there's somebody who sold 20 million copies. Those people, if they're getting information from this person, talk about if it speaks not to the law and to the testimony, there's no light. It's not just no light. He's actively degrading the very beautiful, very delicate and amazing construct of the human body and the mechanisms that it goes on to make something like this happen, let alone the mechanism that can reproduce other life through the beauty of recreation or procreation. And to me, that's very short-sighted, and I'm interested to see more of what he has to say on this topic.
Yeah.
If you repeat a lie often enough, people will think it's the truth, and the bigger the lie, the better. Because people won't even think that, oh, it's something so big can be a lie. And I think that fake news have been with us for thousands of years. Just think of the Bible.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so now the most accurate historical document in human history, which has been proven time and time again through manuscript tradition, held as a icon for archaeologists to find difficult things in obscure places, and then reinforced by extra biblical sources such as the
Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the Medo-Persian kings, there are records.
Exactly.
There's I can't remember, something stone, that Nebuchadnezzar
Rosetta Stone,
something like that. And I can't remember what it is. But all of these sources, even Shishak's invasion of Judah, that's written all over the walls of the Egyptian king, them conquering this, which matches the Bible record exactly. That this person just totally misses the mark and spits in the face of all the scholars and scientists and archaeologists who have already proven the Bible record to have historical validity. Whether you take its divine claims for what they are, you can't deny the accuracy and historicity, let alone the genealogies that you find in there.
And basically, he just said the Bible was the biggest lie.
Yeah.
You know, the bigger you make it, the better it is. And he said, look, the Bible is the best example.
Wow.
And I mean, we mentioned before about some of Ron Wyatt's findings and how that proves the validity of the Bible, because we have all these sites that would, if the stories in the Bible weren't true, wouldn't be there, because they're in very abstract places, abstract scenarios, but they totally prove it.
And time again, the Bible, even secular archaeologists have said the Bible record. In fact, I think the guy's name is Nelson Glueck, one of the greatest archaeologists of all time, says not a single archaeological discovery has ever contradicted one point in the Bible. Yet someone like this, it's almost like when they want to believe that something's a lie, just like he's like, oh, you can believe a lie long enough, you tell it long enough, you actually believe it, no matter how big the lie is. He's almost done the opposite. He's convinced himself it is a lie, so he can, my guess is, I can't see what's in his heart and mind like God can, but he's trying to exalt himself in a way through pride and arrogance to say that I have discovered something greater than the Bible, yet totally disregards the centuries and millennia worth of physical proof showing the Bible record to be true.
Yeah.
One option that some people talk about is that only a catastrophe can shake humankind and opened the path to a real system of global governance. And they say that we can't do it before the catastrophe, but we need to start laying the foundations so that when the disasters strike, we can react quickly. But people will just not have the motivation to do such a thing before the disaster strikes. So the next step is we turn our gaze inwards and we say, okay, gaining control of the world outside us did not really make us satisfied. Let's now try to gain control of the world inside us. This is the big, really big project of science and technology and industry in the 21st century will be to try and gain control of the world inside us, to learn how to engineer and produce bodies and brains and minds. These are likely to be the main products of the 21st century economy. When people think about the future, very often they think in terms, oh, I want to gain control of my body and of my brain. And I think that's very dangerous. We have all this still.
Let's pause it there for a second. So he said a lot of things right there. One of the main things that stuck out to me is that it's dangerous to gain control of your mind and your body. But the Bible says we should have control of our mind and our body. So why do you think he doesn't want us to have control over our mind and our body?
Well, because my guess is he doesn't think the individual, as an individual, has the capacity to handle that. So you might as well handle it over to somebody more enlightened or greater than you to give you the capacity or the pill or the technology to then give you the tools to do that. But what I find interesting is he's talking about your brain and your body and like the inner world, so to speak, rather than the outer. And here he is like bashing on humans, yet he's using a brain that he didn't create himself to come up with ideas, using a body that he didn't give himself, and using the breath in his mouth that he didn't create himself, to then bash on a construct that he says is no good. Yet the whole thing that he's involved in, like the whole makeup of himself, it was given to him. Like he didn't come up with that. He didn't create the flagellum, which is the sperm that is the perfect, most efficient working machine ever. There's no room for evolution in that because if there's no sperm, there's no life, right? So that has to work perfectly from the beginning. And that's what created him and all his organs to evolve his brain and to the point to come up with these theories. Yet somehow all that's been terrible and we've got to do some work. But they couldn't create a human brain. They don't even know exactly how the human brain fully works yet.
It's unbelievable that these guys they're playing God. He's like, no, the individual, and this is going to be more clear as we go. So we should probably keep rolling because there's a lot of really good clips in here. But it's unbelievable that they want to just basically say that individuals shouldn't have control over their own body.
And what does that infer? Who should have control over their own body? Or who should have control over their bodies?
Most likely them.
Yeah, the World Economic Forum
and that's
and by
be
proxy,
really clear.
The Jesuit order, Catholic Church beast system that we talk at length about.
We have all this still myth of free will, that everything we choose is of our own free will. And this is a myth that served us well for a couple of centuries, but now it's becoming dangerous. We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens, because in the coming generations, we will learn how to engineer bodies and brains and minds. Now, how exactly will the future masters of the planet look like? This will be decided by the people who own the data. Now, why is data so important? It's important because we've reached the point when we can hack not just computers, we can hack human beings and other organisms. Now, what do you need in order to hack a human being? You need two things. You need a lot of computing power, and you need a lot of data, especially biometric data. But control of data might enable human elites to do something even more radical than just build digital dictatorships. By hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself. Because once you can hack something, you can usually also engineer it. All of life for 4 billion years, dinosaurs, amoebas, tomatoes, humans, all of life was subject to the laws of natural selection and to the laws of organic biochemistry. But this is now about to change. Science is replacing evolution by natural selection with evolution by intelligent design. Not the intelligent design of some god above the clouds, but our intelligent design and the intelligent design of our clouds. The IBM cloud, the Microsoft cloud, these are the new driving forces of evolution. And at the same time, science may enable life, after being confined for 4 billion years to the limited realm of organic compounds, science may enable life to break out into the inorganic realm.
That was mind-blowing.
There's so much wrong in what he said. It's hard to even know where to start. Let's start with the free will part. He said free will has worked out for a few centuries.
Yeah.
He's just like pulling stuff out of a hat. Because I guess what he's saying is, before the world was freed from the hold of the papacy, which is the 1798, that's only been a few centuries then, because it's the only thing I can think of, because he's saying free will didn't exist before a few centuries ago,
Yeah.
which doesn't make any sense, because the whole basis of God's government, the whole basis of creation and creating man was to give him free will. Now, in doing that, God ran the risk in all of creation, really, because that's how Lucifer felt, right? He had the ability to have free will, and that's when the mystery of iniquity was found in him. But the concept of free will doesn't go back a few centuries. He said it worked for us for a few centuries. I mean, that tells me that he's really just making stuff up, right? Because he's not looking at the whole picture. Free will, even in oppressive governments, has still existed. You can be persecuted for your free will, you can be killed for your free will, but you still have it.
Yeah, no, it's quite scary. He implies that free will is a really bad thing, and that we shouldn't have free will. And that goes to where he said that people shouldn't have control over their mind and their body. And then it goes farther than that, that the elite, and the funny thing is, he's saying that as a good thing.
Yeah, multiple times he said the elite, didn't he?
That the elite, if they have enough data and computing power, that humans are hackable, and that they're just complex computers that are hackable, and the elite are going to be able to hack the people. And now they don't need free will, because free will is actually dangerous. It's this construct that was put together, this ideology to keep people in this box, and it's actually been destructive to the planet. So if we remove that and we give the power to the elites, because he's part of that, because he uses the term we.
Yeah,
and
lead
elites.
advisor to Klausa Švaba is set up there.
And that is like, this is their plan, that people don't have freedom of will anymore.
Which is whose plan? Is
The
that
devil's
really
plan.
That's Satan's plan, because he forces worship. He has forced worship principles. He's the one that had the papacy for 1260 years, pretty much killing anyone who thought for themselves, and were called heretics. But it's just like the new dressed up technological form of that. And then he throws out things like 4 billion years.
Yeah.
But if you ask another scientist, he'll say it's 10 billion years. And then you ask another scientist, and it's 300 billion years. Like, these guys, they really, I mean, they sound smart, but they might be spiritually, wisdom-wise, the most ignorant people on the planet. Because not only are they rejecting, they're like, oh, soon we're going to be able to make brains and bodies. But that's already happening by God's design. Soon we're going to be able to put things in the cloud. But who made the real clouds?
I know.
Who hangs the entire planet Earth on nothing? Like,
It's so crazy. He references this. We're not going to be now done by natural selection. It's going to be by intelligent design, and not some airy-fairy god in the clouds, but the elites through the IBM clouds and the Microsoft clouds and the Apple clouds and all the clouds and the networks and the servers. And
but what happens when your electricity gets cut? God's clouds still work. Their cloud won't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's so dependent on other infrastructure that they think these clouds are so amazing and they can biohack whatever. Yet when they actually go through it, do it today, they can't.
Yeah.
Do it 10 years from now, maybe they will, but it becomes an amalgamation. And it just makes
And that's
things
an
worse.
abomination.
And it is an abomination. It's an affront to God. And when we go back to what Satan really attacks, he attacks God the Creator. It's the same way with the Sabbath idea. The whole point of the Sabbath is to be, hey, I am God. This is my mark.
Yep.
I've set aside this day to remember that I'm a creator. And here they're saying it's a bad design. We can fix it as humans. It's almost like very Tower of Babel, like by works of our own hands.
What I don't understand is they're saying that humans are a problem, maybe even the problem. So we're going to use humans to fix humans.
Enlightened humans.
The problem. It's like, how can you can't have that. That's a closed circuit.
Yeah.
It's circular reasoning.
Yeah.
That humans are going to fix humans, which humans are the problem, and they were an accident in the first place.
Yeah.
And we just need other humans to control humans, and then it's all fixed again.
Yeah, which makes no sense. And it kind of reminds me of these models that they make, you know, the pandemic models, the climate models. They're only as good as the person that has made them and the assumptions that they've made in those models, which we've come to find just from history. Like there used to be signs, I believe, at Yellowstone National Park saying, this won't exist in a certain amount of years because blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then take those signs down because everything's still as it was, in fact, improved in certain instances than what they said was going to happen because the models themselves are terrible.
Yeah.
And they make wild assumptions that aren't based on good information, yet like a lot of the IPCC, the climate panel, coming out with these things that Earth's going to be destroyed. That's based on a model that has a bunch of bad assumptions in it that are made by humans who are super smart, elite scientists, yet over and over again, who proves to be right, God or these scientists who think that they are geniuses that are discovering these things that, quite frankly, when you look at ancient cultures, I would say those guys were a lot smarter than the scientists we have today. Look at the buildings and the sophistication of the pyramids, and we won't go into all that. But
these megalithic structures that are in times when apparently they were basically just hunter-gatherer type people.
And there's all sorts of great documentaries that show the sophisticated technology, like even drill bits that you can see into stone. And the megalithic stone, they talk to stone builders who and masons who cannot, stonemasons, not Freemasons, who cannot move stone that large. You know, there's sophistication beyond what we can understand right now. We're still trying to discover. And here this guy thinks that, you know, somehow they're, like you said, in this circular logic, going to solve all the world's problems by the same people that are making all the world's biggest mistakes.
And the biggest deception is that God made the world and the Sabbath for man. And he put man as the caretaker of the world. So that means that we actually have a duty here. We have a purpose. We actually are what help balance everything. You know, when sin came, he said, you're going to have to till the land. You're going to have to do this. He put him in a garden. He said, work the garden, shape and do this and support and, you know, have dominion over the animals. And this is totally the opposite. This is going down the realm of the Matrix. That's really like everybody plugged in, you know, no more free will. You're just computing power. You're just part of the system.
Giant batteries.
Yeah.
It's directly in opposition to the Bible record. So as an individual, you either get to choose what this guy is saying or what the God of the Bible is saying. And you know, it reminds me of in France after the revolution, I can't remember the historical figure who stood upon the place where there's now like a Bible printing press and was like, in a certain amount of time, the Bible will be extinguished, Christianity will be extinguished. And he was like an enlightened French philosopher. Do you remember who I'm talking about?
I don't remember the name.
Oh, okay. But he was basically not only proven wrong, but today sits a place where the Bible is printed and distributed around the world. Guys like Yuval, they come and they go. They say these miraculous things and they always fall flat on their face. Even if elements start to come true, we see the world ends as a Christian world. Even Satan doesn't try to pretend that he can do away with Christianity. He comes in the garb of Christianity. So like these people, Yuval, Klaus Schwab, you know, they speak a good game, but history shows people like them just end up essentially forgotten in history or used as a point to say, wow, look how foolish humans can be.
Well, let's take a look at the next clip here.
Humans are now hackable animals. You know, the whole idea that humans have, you know, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over. Free will, that's over.
That's over.
Today, we have the technology to hack human beings on a massive scale. Everything is being monitored. In this time of crisis, you have to follow science. It's often said that you should never allow a good crisis to go to waste, because a crisis is an opportunity to also do good reforms that in normal times people will never agree to. But in a crisis, you see, we have no chance, so let's do it.
The vaccine won't help us go
The
to
vaccine
the next, of course.
will help us, of course. It will make things, you know, more manageable.
Surveillance, people could look back in 100 years and identify the coronavirus epidemic as the moment when a new regime of surveillance took over, especially surveillance under the skin, which I think is maybe the most important development of the 21st century, is this ability to hack human beings, to go under the skin, collect biometric data, analyze it, and understand people better than they understand themselves. This, I believe, is maybe the most important event of the 21st century.
He just referenced the thing that we've been going through.
When was that?
past
When
year.
was that talked about? Was that pre-pandemic?
No, this is during.
This is during the pandemic. Okay.
This is during. And he's saying that people are going to look back at this event and say, that was the point that they got all our biometric data. This is a time when we put tracking and hackable instruments inside people and all these things. And he's very open about it and saying, yeah, this is happening.
Which is, you know, the lead advisor for Klaus Schwab is saying that the crisis was a opportunity to put good measures in place. That good is defined by whom? You know, that's always the interesting thing to me, is like from their perspective, they're saying it's good measures that wouldn't be allowed in normal circumstances. Well, why wouldn't they be allowed? Because normally people wouldn't allow you.
It goes against their freedom.
It goes against their free will. It goes against their liberty of conscience, which we saw during this whole health crisis recently. And we see that they're like, there's a lot of conspiratorial, energy around the whole health crisis. Yet there's the lead advisor for Klaus Schwab saying this is a way to go inside and collect biometric data.
Yep.
So people who are saying that those things are happening under the skin, you wouldn't be conspiratorial. You'd just be repeating what these guys here in Canada, the health pass that we had was said it was from the World Economic Forum and the Rockefeller Foundation. That's not conspiracy. That's on your phone when you downloaded that app. So it's tough for guys like us who often get, pigeonholed by certain people as being conspiratorial. Well, when we see things like this, you can just see we are presenting information that is not said by the conspiracy world. It's said by the people who are running the apps and funding a lot of the health measures that are being used to see under people's skins.
We wanted to show these videos because we're not saying this. These guys are saying it themselves. Mm-hmm. This is one of the highest guys there. Mm-hmm. And they're telling us, don't let any, not catastrophe, crisis go to waste. The thing is, I really don't believe they wait for crises.
They're manufactured for the most part.
They prepare for a crisis, manufacture a crisis, and then go to the next crisis.
Yeah.
And that's pretty scary. That 2019 through 2022 is going to be one of the biggest turning points in global history. in regards to surveillance.
Yep. And I don't think that they're going to turn back the clock on that. I think it's pretty much a steady ramp up from here. And, you know, we spent a lot of time saying, don't worry as much about the World Economic Forum and UN and watch out for American Protestantism and with this being a religious battle. But that doesn't mean that the technology and means to get to like a no buy, no sell, everything's monitored, digital currency, all these things can still be born out of these movements. But if we're not careful, they can also be distractions. So what we're trying to do here is pull together the elements that are going to be part of this religious mark of the beast system, but aren't chasing the globalists all around and saying that's where all this is going to come from, because we know it's going to be in America. But these technologies have already been implemented, as we've seen from the last few years. And when we have listened to, let's say, the likes of Tony Blair come out and say that there's going to be more of these injections in the future, and that in order to do that, there's going to be they need to see for public health and safety if you have taken yours. Otherwise, how can you know who's safe and who's not? Like, these technologies can still bleed over into this religious movement to monitor and surveil people, no doubt about it.
Maybe in a couple of decades, when people look back, the thing they will remember from the COVID crisis is this is the moment when everything went digital. And if this was the moment when everything became monitored, that we agreed to be surveyed all the time, not just in authoritarian regimes, but even in democracies. And maybe most importantly at all, this was the moment when surveillance started going under the skin. Because really, we haven't seen anything yet.
Pause it there.
Right?
So everybody agreed to be surveyed.
Did you agree?
I didn't agree.
I didn't agree. Not that I was told, at least.
No. And that this is when surveillance goes under the skin. Now, we're not going to get into that today. But those are some very intriguing statements that he's saying.
Yeah, and I would like to say for the true Christians out there, these are the types of people we need to pray for. You know, when it says pray for those who despitefully use you and persecute you, we've never met this man. But he's, in essence, by proxy, trying to persecute us through the forcing of his ideologies and views of the world, which are devoid of God, and saying that you are, you know, forced to participate because your free will, you don't really have it. And so, you know, would God, from God's perspective, would he prefer that this man turn and see the truth and accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior? 100%. Because that's the character of the God that we serve. And so as we're watching these things, we're not really saying, get out your pitchforks and let's go get Juvala. We're saying, pray for this man. Pray for the Klausa Švabas of the world.
Jesus said when the people were crucifying him, they know not what they do.
And that you can tell. Juvala, as smart as he appears to be, he doesn't know what he's doing. And even if he does, he doesn't really, because he doesn't understand the second death. He doesn't understand the judgment, the close of his probation. You know, these are all things that my heart aches, not to the level that Jesus does for him, but my heart aches because I know Jesus would rather have this man turn and live than to be destroyed in the coming judgment. And as true Christians, if we really are true Christians, we shouldn't hate this person. We should feel sad and pray for this person. So that's something that's standing out more and more to me. Instead of getting angry,
really
I want to pray for this guy.
Yeah, and that's what we want to show people too, is we're not showing these things so that you can be, we're not promoting an Alex Jones type of an attitude.
Right.
Where it's like, revolution and all this kind of stuff. No,
down with the system.
that's not the thing at all. We're told that some of the closest people to the throne of God is going to be those that was working directly with Satan. So we need to keep that in mind, that if we are, let's say one day you come in contact with a person like this or another person and we treat them un-Christ-like, what kind of witness is that? Or if we treat them Christ-like, maybe it'll actually make them think.
Reminds me of the Roman soldier who was part of, like, you know, locking up all these apostles, and they, you know, end up witnessing to him. And I believe the record shows that he was converted and his family was converted after they had, you know, treated these people terribly, treated God's people terribly. And when people may not understand the statement you said, where, you know, those who served Satan, highest in Satan's kingdom, when they convert, will sit closest in the kingdom of God to God, that actually makes a lot of sense, because they know the devil's character so much that when they convert to God and they really see the light, their whole heart is converted because they've seen the inner workings of the enemy. They know the true character. And so again, it's, to me, a testament to God's true character and his love, that he would allow someone who was closest to his worst arch enemy to sit closest to him, because he allows for the true conversion of the heart. So, you know, Yuval Noah, what's his last name? Harari.
I don't know if we're pronouncing that perfectly.
Well, either way, you know, I hope God reaches your heart and mind, and I hope somehow, some way, we all embrace in heaven and we can hear his conversion story from going to this blaspheming power and the words that are coming out of his mouth that make my skin crawl, to somebody who is a servant, a true servant of Jesus Christ.
Jesus said, to whom much is forgiven is much love, right? So these people who have been far, sometimes they feel the mercy of Jesus way stronger than people who feel they haven't fallen quite as far.
Right.
I think the big process that's happening right now in the world is hacking human beings, the ability to hack humans, to understand deeply what's happening within you, what makes you go. For that, the most important data is not what you read and who you meet and what you buy, it's what's happening inside your body. So we had these two big revolutions, the computer science revolution, or the infotech revolution, and the revolution in the biological sciences. And they are still separate, but they are about to merge. They are merging around, I would say, the biometric sensor. It's the thing, it's the gadget, it's the technology that converts biological data into digital data that can be analyzed by computers. And having the ability to really monitor people under the skin, this is the biggest game changer of all. What we have seen so far, it's corporations and governments collecting data about where we go, who we meet, what movies we watch. The next phase is the surveillance going under our skin. Mass surveillance systems established even in democratic countries, which previously rejected them. And we also see a change in the nature of surveillance. Previously, surveillance was mainly above the skin. Now it's going under the skin. Governments want to know not just where we go or who we meet. Above all, they want to know what is happening under our skin. What's our body temperature? What's our blood pressure? What is our medical condition?
We're seeing a common repetitive theme. Under the skin, under the skin, under the skin. But it also, he just revealed that everything you watch, everything you look at, everywhere you go with your GPS in your car, that these are data collection tools. And I think that most people are somewhat aware of that. And the general notion I hear from most people is, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, so I don't really care. But there comes a crossroads with that line of thinking. You don't care right now. But what happens when their dictates change and they limit where you can go? And they see what you have been watching and that what your kids are doing, and they say, well, we're not going to let you do that anymore. And it's crossed such a threshold that you can't turn it back anymore. And
like he was saying, this kind of goes back into like the 15-minute city topic, which you're not allowed to leave your 15-minute city for more than a certain amount of time a year. And it's going to start with a big, time frame. And people are going to be like, oh, well, that's okay. I can manage.
I don't go out that often anyway.
That is insane that people actually have that thought.
Yeah.
That instead of saying, they shouldn't tell me ever, they're slowly conditioned to actually reason themselves into slavery. It's just mind-blowing.
And I think that is a hallmark of the papacy, right? Because they hate the Constitution, they hate the Bill of Rights, and we're going to look at that in future episodes when it's in regards to the Sabbath, from the Catholic perspective. They hate the Bill of Rights and the Constitution because it protects the rights of the individual, them to choose and think for themselves. And so you can almost see the crossover with what Harari is talking about here, because even though it's technologically packed, it's really promoting the same concept of the papacy, which is we don't like your individual rights and freedoms. We want to dictate your conscience. And now they have like a new angle through data collection and the establishment of the common good. As that common good definition changes, then the information they collect can say, oh, well, you didn't, and this is happening in China with their social credit score apps. You didn't do your Chinese governmental quiz today.
Yep.
You didn't go see your grandmother. And they have like all of these things that account for your score. So for those people who say, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, it doesn't matter. What happens when you do have a problem with it and you have no more recourse to say yay or nay?
Some people might think, oh, maybe that's not really happening. Well, I was just talking to someone the other day who's from China, and I was saying to them, is this really taking place? Absolutely. This is, yes. It will affect your ability to use transit. Can you get an airplane ticket? Can you get a loan? All these things are affected by that.
Yeah.
And it's coming to a country near you. This is their plan.
Trudeau said his favorite government on earth is who?
Is China.
Is China. And we're not going to get into all the conspiratorial backgrounds of that guy, but he has Jesuit connections and communist connections.
World Economic Forum.
Yeah, he's a graduate of the school there, along with Chrystia Freeland. So, these are not far-fetched theories.
Yeah.
The fact that you have the most oppressive government on earth that let people during the health crisis literally die in burning buildings because they wouldn't unlock the doors. And you have most of the world, and because I'm American, for many years, we have down there see Canada as this like nice people, and it's a free land and free health care and all this stuff. But after living here a few years, as grateful as I am that God placed me up here and working with you here at this ministry, and the blessing that that's been, and a beautiful place that we live, from a government and a people standpoint, we are one shred away from a full-on Chinese-style dictatorship.
Yeah.
And there were cracks in that when you watched what happened, what they did with the finances and freezing bank accounts and calling things terrorists.
Yep.
That's a great example of, as soon as the definition changes, they're saying, oh, well, now we're including all these people as terrorists because we say so.
Yeah.
And now you can have all of your assets frozen. I mean, we could go down the laundry list, private property rights and all sorts of things up here. And we see that they're all aligning with one type of mindset. And really the only country that is not aligned with this yet is America, which is why it makes so much sense that all the prophetic happenings are going to happen in America, because it's the last place that hasn't fallen for this bait.
It's the lamb-like beast.
Yeah.
It's the one that has the people.
Yeah.
The people rights. They have to remove that.
Yeah. And that's the only one that was paid for with blood through revolutions and escaping persecution. Even up here in Canada, we're on a charter, so charters can be revoked in essence. And so when you look at the whole picture in the context of the WEF and Harari and all these Klaus Schwabs, it makes sense to me why all the world is pretty much prepped and why the devil's focus is so much on the United States, because it's the last domino to fall.
Yeah.
Now humans are developing even bigger powers than ever before. We are really acquiring divine powers of creation and destruction.
Oh, wow.
We are really upgrading humans into gods. We are acquiring, for instance, the power to re-engineer life.
Can we pause
This
that?
story about
Yeah. So for a guy who rejects all notion of divinity, here he is talking about how we have divine powers. That's just like oxymoronic to me. And I don't understand how somebody can talk out of two sides of their mouth so much.
It's unbelievable that he's saying that we are getting basically to God status.
Which is the serpent lie, right?
Yeah.
You will be as gods.
First lie.
Yeah. It reminds me of the Skull and Bones 3:22. It's
Yeah.
Genesis 3:22. The basis of all of this thinking is based in the idea that we at some point are gods.
Yep.
At least from their standpoint, maybe not the low-level guys like us. We're just, as he said in the first one, we're nothing.
Yeah.
But the elites, The illuminated ones, the pyramid on the back with the separated capstone that's illuminated with an eye in it, that is the mindset that they are gods. They are evolving to God's status, and this is the original serpent lie.
Yeah.
All this story about Jesus rising from the dead and being the Son of God, this is fake news.
In recent years, we saw populist politicians undermining deliberately the trust that people have in important institutions like universities, like respectable media outlets. These populist politicians told people that, say, scientists are this small elite disconnected from the real people. We shouldn't believe them. And you had all these conspiracy theories that climate change is just a hoax, it's not real, and that the earth is actually flat, and that vaccinations are bad for you, and this spread. But I don't think it's too late. Especially in an emergency, people can change their views very fast, and they can discover hidden reservoirs of trust.
Can we pause it?
In this crisis, who do...
So I want to go to merge the two statements he said. He said Jesus Christ being the Son of God is fake news.
Yeah.
Then he goes on to say, but those who say these vaccines and climate change is bad or not real, they don't understand. So here he's saying the real truth is a lie and called fake news.
Yeah.
And the stuff that's a lie is true or real. And so it really presents the conundrum for people who are trying to discern what's real and what's fake. If they're getting blasted with, this is fake news, this is fake news. Here he's taken the truest statement of all time and called it fake news. This is why we have to watch out for the misinformation, disinformation, fake news movement.
Oh, thank you. He was referencing the news outlets, reputable news outlets, these universities, which are basically brainwashing people and saying that these are all very good things. But then you have to caveat that with his statements, which is you shouldn't have control of your mind and your body. So what do you think these good news outlets and good universities are doing? They're removing your control of your own mind, your own body, your own ability to make calculated, good decisions. That's basically what he wants to promote. And it's not a stretch. This is just saying what he was saying.
Yeah, and it really just boggles my mind that now every time I hear fake news, I'm going to be, and anyone watching this who believes in Jesus Christ being the way, the truth, the life, no one comes to the Father but through him. If that guy says it's fake news, then that means everything that he tells me is true, I think is fake. Everything he tells me that's fake, I'm going to think is true because he's just taken, again, the truest statement of all time and said that it's fake news.
People trust, they trust scientists above everything else. In all countries. In Israel, they closed down the synagogues. In Iran, they closed the mosques. Churches all over the world are telling people don't come to church. The Pope is doing all these ceremonies on Zoom or YouTube. And why do they do all this? Because the scientists recommended it. Even the religious leaders have trust in the scientists.
I think this is the left versus right kind of battle, the science versus religion.
Yeah.
And obviously the last couple of years, it looks heavy in the science direction. Everyone's saying science is going to save the world. They're going to come up with treatments that save us from these diseases. And he's saying that, synagogues, mosques, and churches are all closed, but scientists are going to save the world. What does the Bible show is going to come in this end? Is it a scientific movement or will it be a religious movement?
He's mixing a lot of things because in the end it's going to be religious. But really what he's saying is religious because this is his ideology. And an ideology could be boiled down to a religious worldview.
Yeah.
And it's really no different than a Christian saying he believes in Jesus and the Bible is his basis, and him saying scientists, which shouldn't be our basis because scientists disagree all the time.
Yeah.
And is science over the Bible or should science agree with the Bible? I'm not saying that the Bible disagrees with good science because it doesn't.
No, in
it
fact,
always agrees.
Science is a great way to describe the mechanisms that God uses within his creation. but not when it says that it supersedes God or degrades God or gets rid of God completely. And so I agree. I think you make a good point that the faith that the world has placed in is in scientists, yet we've seen a whole host of issues from that in some people who've done everything that they were supposed to do through this thing come out worse off than when they started. Now, what is it that their trust in scientists done? On an individual level, I've seen people in my own life that I've talked to that did everything that they were supposed to do, and because it didn't work as they were told, they are now skeptical of the whole thing. So he said the world trusts scientists. Well, the world gave the scientists a chance to be trusted, and I think a lot of people have seen the other side and said, well, maybe they're not as smart, or they're not all cracked up to be what they say they are, which then oddly enough has pushed them more to be religious, because they see that, maybe we can't trust these people the way that Hararija here is saying.
Yeah.
The easiest people to manipulate are the
people like
people who
me.
believe in free will, because you manipulate them and they don't even suspect, because, hey, I chose it because this is my free will. We need some kind of global loyalty and global identity. Earth will be populated or even dominated by entities that are not organic, that they don't breathe, they don't have emotions. Like the potential of AI is much, much bigger than any historical revolution. It's really a biological revolution. And now if you give the tools to start changing or overcoming biology, just, think about sex life. Almost every religion and every ideology wanted to really change human sexuality or limit it, but they couldn't. You had vows of chastity in the church, and how many people actually lived up to the vows of chastity? Now think, if you can really start messing with human biology, what will be the result of these sexual fantasies of different religions and ideologies?
Wow, that was convoluted.
Yeah. You see, and this is what happens when you're without the word of God, is you just start going down like tangents. Your logic trees start to spin off into weird, end results. And there's no consistency or congruency that allows an individual to get any closer to truth. In fact, guys like this often will send people, they'll read their books, and then they'll look up and try to get deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. At the end, they end up with more questions than answers.
Yeah.
That leads to the point where you can't define what biology or the genetic makeup of a male or a female is.
If we're talking about science, we need to talk about science. We need to talk about biology. We need to talk about chemistry. We need to talk about these things. He's saying the scientists and the science over religion and these fake news, which is Jesus and all this kind of stuff that doesn't match science. And then he's saying that this idea of only a man and a woman is just a construct of a religious thing. And, we couldn't hold it to that. Now we're experimenting with different kind of biology, and you couldn't hold it there. What couldn't you hold? Nothing has changed. Doesn't matter what you call it. There's a question. I don't know. I can't remember the person who asked it, but they said, I feel like it was Abraham Lincoln. He said, if you called the tail on a dog a leg, how many legs would a dog have? So what do you think most people answered?
5.
5. He said, no, 4. Just because you call it a leg doesn't make it a leg. If we're talking real biology here, how many legs does a dog have?
4.
That's 4. Unless it gets an accident and it loses a leg.
But naturally, it's a four-legged creature.
It's a four-legged creature. And it doesn't matter if you want to call the tail a leg, it's a tail.
Yeah.
It's not a leg.
Yeah.
And if we want to talk about real facts, real science, nothing is a variable in science. Everything is solid. There's no room for error. When we're talking about chemistry, these chemicals do this, every single time. That's why we can repeat it when we're using things for chemical treatments, or we're using them for explosives or whatever. You can always consistently rely, because science never changes. Biology never changes. You need a male, you need a female to have reproduction. That's how it works every single time. It doesn't change.
And obviously he's going to argue, well, we're evolving out of that, but all it's going to do is make things worse. You know what I mean? And so in trying to take the role of God, they're actually going to start breaking the human being. And I think that's something that, we'll have to keep an eye out for as the years go by, is what happens to the people that take the treatments that they are recommending, and how does it work out for them? Because, we're not going to get into this today. There are others out there who have kept records of how people have done with the most recent treatments that have been given out to the world. And the list is not looking good.
Yeah.
So while they try to wear this garb of we're going to fix humanity, they're actively breaking humanity. And I don't know if guys like Harari know that that's what they're actually doing, but it doesn't really matter. And I think the thing we can take away from this, at least from my 2 cents, is that your relationship with your Creator supersedes anything that man can ever do here on earth. And there's not going to be any pill, any treatment that is going to lead you to a better state than a relationship with God will.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately, if we can get to a point where we can hear these things and not get mad, and focus on prayers for these people and strengthen in our faith, because we know this type of ideology is accepted by those in the world, we can have the opportunity to be real witnesses for God, which is our true created purpose.
Yeah.
Let me just say to all the people out there, you are important. You do matter. God gave his most precious son to come down here to save you, so that way you could be reconciled with him for forever. When you listen to a guy like this, you could go spin into a depression because you don't think you're of any value, but you are the most valuable person that could ever be, because otherwise Christ would not have come and died for you individually, and me and you. And it's just up to us whether we want to accept that as real news or fake news.
One of the stories that I like to compare the end with, Jesus says we should compare it with the time of Noah. And I don't think we've really touched on it much. But when we look at the intelligence of the antediluvian world, which means pre-flood, it was so extensive. And that carried over after the flood. That's why we have these megalithic structures that we have no idea how they got there, how they were built. When we look at the pyramids, there's over 2 million blocks, anywhere from a couple tons to dozens of tons. And we think that, they just had a couple thousand people on the other side with a bunch of ropes. And they were cut perfectly and they fit exactly together. And they brought them from hundreds of miles away. The stones aren't even from that area. Somehow they brought them from hundreds of miles away. And we're thinking that this was low intelligence. But the interesting thing about the antediluvian world, it's a type of what's going to happen at the end. So when God had to cleanse the world the first time, what was the main things that they were doing that were an abomination? They were changing the genetics. They were doing mixing species. The Bible talks about this.
Amalgamations.
There was amalgamations. They were trying to change humans. All these kinds of things were taking place then. And God said, no, this is too far. And now we see that that is exactly the thing that they're trying to do now. That should show us more than ever that we are really, really close to the end of history.
Yep, we are. And it allows us to share this information for as long as we can. We encourage people to go to adtv.watch. As censorship increases, we will be going over there for as long as we can. We'll be preaching on this for as long as we can. And when they shut us down online, we'll be going in the streets and in the cities to give this information. So until they lock us up or till Jesus comes, we'll be trying to share this information with people.
Please like, share, and subscribe these videos. We really appreciate the support, and we want to get these things out to as many people as possible. We have a lot of amazing projects we're doing at Amazing Discoveries. Truth does matter. Truth isn't relative. It is it's consistent. It doesn't change. God doesn't change. We are actually working, a little bit of a spoiler, on a mobile unit where we can go to different cities and give presentations there directly to people, because they are doing these censoring things, and we don't want to be hindered from giving the message and trying to tell people and warn people of the things that are taking place.
Yep. And please, if you will, keep us in your prayers and share the message far and wide, and open your Bibles and have that relationship with Jesus Christ. Pray for your enemies and those who use you. Thanks for joining us.